The following production is intended for entertainment purposes only. We are not legal professionals. We do not speak for any government agency, and the opinions expressed here are our own. Relax.
I could.
Now we're recording.
Okay.
What were you about to say?
Edited that out very easily.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
It's okay.
You're talking about your microphone. Couple things.
Yeah.
First
Yeah.
off, I'm gonna cough a whole lot this morning, and
That's
I'm
cool.
trying not to.
That's all
Actually,
right.
kind of sucks, but um,
Mm.
couple things. First off, I'm gonna cough a whole lot. Second, I'm in the danger zone as far as allegedly there's a mouse down here,
Oh,
and
you're not worried
apparently
about mice though, are you?
And apparently he hides out under this chair. So if you see me kind of like my eyes darting around like I'm some sort of like I owe somebody money, it's because there's supposed to be a mouse, and I wouldn't say I'm afraid of mice. That's way overstating the situation. I just really, really hate them. Um,
You really hate them?
yes, I can't stand them. And that the way that looks is like I hate them so I'm afraid of how much I hate them. So the way that looks is if I see one, I may very well knock all of this over in an attempt to get out of its way because I'm afraid of that hatred. I'm afraid of that anger. I got that
Yeah.
dog inside me.
It may look like you're terrified, but actually you're terrified of how angry you're becoming.
Exactly. Exactly. I don't want to like destroy my house over this thing.
In real time, you're processing multiple emotions at 11. Like you are up there.
So anyway, you were talking
How,
about your microphone, and I just want to point this
I don't
out.
think we're going to.
I just want to point this out. How much better your audio sounds than mine.
I think they sound the same.
Oh, I don't think so. When I listen to it, man, maybe it's just it could possibly just be that your voice is better than mine, or I like your voice more than mine. But it's just like it just sounds
Okay,
better. I don't know.
we can definitely talk about this because this is relevant to right now today. Um, Last week's episode, I was so self-conscious of because I hate the sound of my voice. I think I sound, I think I sound, I think I sound like a 25% gay youth pastor is what my voice sounds like whenever I hear it on the podcast. I'm like, oh, does he got a little sugar in his gas tank? What the heck is this
It's
about?
25% gay.
Oh man.
Oh, there you are.
Oh,
Um,
busted.
yeah.
What you were evaluating 25% gay youth pastor.
Yeah, I was trying to figure out. I was just trying to quantify like what 25% gets you. That's like okay, so that would be like you're looking more than once at another dude.
Well,
You took that second look. It didn't go any farther than that. You're just no.
it's I would say maybe. God bless. I'm sorry. Maybe it's a second glance, but I think it's more like,
Getting hot in here, ain't
yeah, woo,
it?
really evaluating like someone's shoes, a woman's shoes. Like, oh my God, those heels look really nice, and then just keep on going. Like it's not even true homo attraction as much as it is like, hmm, that shirt fits very nicely. Maybe that's just my own,
Yeah, just fancy.
yeah,
Just fancy guy.
fancy.
Anyway, you know it. Your voice sounds delicious.
Okay, well, grazie. I've uploaded my I've uploaded the thing to Spotify, but I still have yet to upload it to YouTube, where the bulk of our listens come from is from YouTube.
Hmm.
I haven't uploaded it there yet. Uh, and I think subconsciously it's because I don't like my voice, or like I'm super critical of everything that I do.
Really? Always, or just from the last one?
Always, but I think the last one particularly. And I've re-listened to it a couple times, and every time I listen to it, the things that I hate about it get less and less. Like it's less and less sharp. Like, it's not that bad. Uh,
Yeah.
I guess it
No,
sounds like every other one.
yeah, I didn't notice anything in particular. Um, that's kind of weird though about hearing your own voice. Like I can't stand my voice.
Yeah.
And nobody, as far as I know, nobody else hates it. Like nobody's directly told me that they hate my voice.
Yeah. Hey, just so
Um,
you know, I hate your
your
voice.
voice is so terrible.
Makes me want
Um,
to.
yeah, so I guess that's probably normal.
But are there voices that you hear and it just makes your blood boil?
Like inside my head.
Yeah. Oh, the voice
Yeah.
inside your head?
Yeah.
That's the one.
We talked about this once before, and I don't know if you were just making stuff up or not. Um, did you
We'll
say
see.
one did you say one time that you don't have an inner dialogue? Like you don't hear what was it? Like I hear when I'm thinking about things or when I'm having arguments
I
or
I
just
remember this
processing.
conversation. Yeah.
Like I obviously I don't hear voices, but I imagine conversations. But I feel like you were saying that you more picture it or something like that, or am I way off base?
Sometimes I roll around, but I remember yeah, I don't talk like I think remember we were talking about this when the first time I remember talking about it was in the parking lot of the squad room. And did you say that you like talk to yourself in your mind? Or like you did I freeze there? You jumped
Yeah.
ahead.
Yeah,
Uh,
my internet's kind of wacky this morning.
it's all good. Uh I remember the first time we talked about this was in the parking lot of the squad room. And did I remember right that you said you talk to yourself in your mind? Like you're like, so first I have to get out the
Eh,
cookie dough and then I have to roll it into little squares. And you do that?
Not specifically that scenario, but yes, yeah, all the time.
That is insane to me. That is like, I kind of want to call the police in Sedgwick County. Like, no, I have like well, a couple different ways. When I was really young, I recognized that this was kind of weird and well, imagined that it was weird and stopped myself from doing it. But I've researched it since then and found that that this is fairly common. But is I imagine things fitting in like a color and a shape as like a prepared. Are you there?
Yes. Well, I'm here, but
Face is frozen.
my face is frozen.
That's all good. I remember I used to think of everything and I still do as almost like a default mode and a color and a shape. So like when I was a kid, I thought everything, I don't know, this was like kindergarten, first, second, third. Yeah, like early elementary, first half of elementary is when I remember this happening. But is where I remember recognizing this and thinking, you should stop doing this. I think people think if they knew what was going on in your brain, they would put you in prison. Um, but I thought everything fit in like a color and a shape combination. So like there was already like there's only so many things a person can say. And even that is really just a bunch of different versions of this one thing. Like it's really just a yes or a no. Like everything's pretty binary and branching out from there, the possibilities are really binary, if you break it down. So in my mind, it came down to like I remember thinking blue square. Like a lot of stuff was like, blue square. Or look at that red circle. Oh my God. Or
Hmm.
hearing it out loud, I hear that makes no sense. But that was like how my old I just remember thinking like that. But I've looked it up and I'm not the only one that's ever happened to, so I don't need a straight jacket.
What what do they call that? Like I'm I've never heard of that except from you.
Okay.
I mean, I'm not doubting you. I've just never heard of that. Is my screen frozen to you also?
Yeah. Yeah, when people describe color and shape in their inner dialogue, they often, this is from Google, their AI thing, which I actually kind of like. A vivid mix of colors associated with emotion, sometimes appearing as swirling patterns or floating shapes. Yeah, I remember, and it still is. It's like in school, in elementary school, when you're laying your head on your desk for whatever, and like there's something against your eyes, and you see like different colors and shapes
Oh, yeah.
floating. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
I imagined like all the responses that could possibly come out of me. So all of my possible outputs and all of the possible inputs were some combination of those like colors and shapes that come out of your mind or that are just there. Like
Yeah.
these vibrating triangles that rotate into squares that rotate into,
Did
whatever.
they give you LSD when you were in school?
No. No, I've
No?
never had it.
Okay.
That's just straight from the pineal gland, baby.
Yeah, that's from the. Yeah, never mind. I'll leave it alone.
Depending on the individuals and the nature of their thoughts. Yeah, it's visual representation of their inner thoughts. It's a personal. Yeah, see,
Interesting.
I'm not the only one.
Um, I can't remember what we were talking about before I uh, derailed us there. I don't think we
Well,
even said hello.
no, we
Oh,
haven't.
my bad. I just came out ready to go.
Yeah, yeah. You were like, "Hey, what's up?" Or I said, "Hey," when we turned it on, and started bitching about my microphone, and you were like, "Stop, let's record." My
So anyway,
microphone.
you want to throw a
The
hello? What's up?
Oh, hello. Welcome to Lawless podcast with Justin and Clayton. I'm Clayton. This is my buddy Justin. We're pretty unqualified to talk about most things, but that doesn't stop us.
That doesn't stop us.
And welcome. It's usually about an hour and a half. You can stay for 5 minutes if you want to,
And
or an hour and a half.
and it's a wild ride.
I'll tell you, there are secret messages at the end that I saved just for the end. So might behoove you to pay, especially if you want to keep control of your conditioner. I'm gonna throw another.
Hey,
Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
that have
I'm
we?
gonna say the results are inconclusive because of my release. I didn't
Oh, yeah.
release the YouTube, and I know that person usually only watches the YouTube one. So
Yeah, you gotta get that. You gotta get that out. Let's. Can we release that today?
yeah. I will.
Okay. Okay.
At this point, all I got to do is upload a file. I'll do it as soon as we get done with here. The editing, there was no editing, but I do have to put on, my little disclaimer at the front and a picture, and that's pretty much it. And I can press it and load it up.
Yeah.
Well, that's all done.
Um, this is terrible form, but I see you drinking that monster, and it really makes me want to have a monster. So I'm gonna run upstairs and grab one from the fridge. Hang on
No,
one
that's
sec.
fine.
Um, something that might be helpful for people to know is that we're recording this really early. At least for, I mean, you're an hour ahead, but
Yeah.
I woke up at 5:30 this morning.
I woke up at 6 my time, so 5 your time.
Yeah, that's too early for me these days.
Yeah.
There was a time, well, we talked about this before back when I was working on that overtime, but even when
Didn't
I
we
was
put
just
a pin in whatever we were talking about to come back and immediately talk back? I have no idea what that was.
yeah, my attention span isn't that long anymore.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I mean, I don't even remember what I was just talking about with. Oh
God
yeah.
dang.
No, I remember when I used to work first shift. I would get up at like 4 o'clock in the morning to work out, and
Uh-huh.
it was just like a normal thing. But
Yeah, I
these days,
remember.
dude, I can't even get up at like 6:30. I can't get out of bed.
When you were on first shift, you would oftentimes come and relieve me in the lobby of the jail at like 4 o'clock in the morning sometimes.
Yeah, but and I think maybe it's just because when you've got to get up, it's easier. But
Yeah.
when you're self-employed or when you don't
Woo-wee.
really have to get up, it's a little more difficult.
That is a dangerous territory to navigate. One of the things I like about Uh, my my current gig is I have a schedule, and I appreciate that schedule,
Mm,
even though there's a lot of flex in it, and like I write my own schedule, but every time I write my schedule, I show it to the person that's above me in the chain, and they've never said no, but sometimes I have to like flex that an hour or so.
yeah.
Like,
Like they'll ask you to flex it or
no, like something will come up and I have to go in early
mm,
or I have to go in late, and I'll just adjust. Yeah.
yeah.
Like today, my hard out is not my hard out. I got more time than I thought.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I could have slept a little bit longer.
You
That's
could
cool.
have.
That's cool. That's cool.
But since you already committed to this time, I didn't want any more changes
Yes.
on myself either. Uh
Um,
yeah,
go ahead.
I was gonna say, as far as the schedule's kind of tough for us sometimes. Like specifically me and you. We're I spent my entire adult life in the military, fairly structured, or and then in my when I was 30, I transitioned into law enforcement, fairly structured, abiding by a pretty strict schedule. And uh I'm post those things now, and still sometimes it's hard for me. That's what I was saying, is that schedule helps me because when I was 100% on my own schedule, it was tough just to get out of
Yeah.
bed. I'm like,
Yep.
I don't have anything till 10 o'clock this morning. Looks like I'm sleeping until 9:30. You know?
Yeah. Yeah, but I have a problem with the inner dialogue, I guess. Feeling lazy.
Yeah.
Like if I physically I want to sleep in, but
Yeah.
mentally when I do, I just feel guilty or like
Uh-huh.
frustrated. Like I'm just unhappy with myself if I do sleep in, but I want to sleep in. Um, and then I just have an argument with the voices in my head.
I almost get like there's a red flashing light in the top of, like, we're in an office and like all of a sudden the bombs are coming in, because I associate sleeping in with depression, and like when I've been because like all adults, especially into the mid part of their lives, I think most people have struggled with some form of depression, or
Mhm.
maybe most people I know have struggled with some form of depression.
Wait a second, we're not all
Yeah,
depressed?
we're not all. I'm no, actually, I'm pretty sure we are. Um, so, but like depression can be dangerous. Like at it has taken people's lives. And if you've lived long enough, you've probably seen that once or twice, or been affected by it. You know what I mean? Or know someone who has. And so now, whenever I sleep in, and this is like a color shape thing. Like this isn't something that I say to myself, but this is just something that like feels like it's in that world. Sleeping in is associated with depression to me, and because I know depression can be very dangerous. Like I immediately get afraid. I'm like, you're supposed to be up. You're supposed to be productive. Like, oh,
Oh, yeah.
you're supposed to be happy and singing right now.
Yeah.
Uh, Also, my bladder doesn't let me sleep past 6 anymore. At 6 o'clock, I have to be up, or I'm like, I feel like my stomach is going to explode from I'm not worried about because I've trained it, I think. I'm not worried about peeing the bed anymore. I'm just like, it feels like my lower abdomen is going to burst. So like, I have to get out of bed.
Um, I've been hearing a lot of um on Pandora, my radio. I've been getting a lot of bedwetting ads, and I'm not real sure why, because I don't feel like I've done anything to create that scenario. But
Justin.
there's this one ad that comes on all the time, and it just says bedwetting happens, and then it goes into whatever else. Um, even though I think I think I finally threw them away. I had a I had a package of adult Depends diapers for the longest time because I thought it would be funny to, well, first off, First, I thought that would be very handy because I was doing these road trips, for Ragnar,
Yeah.
and
No, no, no. This cannot go where I think it's going.
well, it didn't go, but I tried. So I
Get
do all
the
these.
fuck out of here. You planned on, just to be safe, I might have to.
No, 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 not for safety, for convenience, because
Oh
I
my God.
because like it takes a long time, man. To first off, you got to find the place, then you got to pull off, and then you got to go inside. And when you go in, like it just takes a while. So I was like, I'll just throw these Depends on, and I'll just piss my pants. It's gonna save so much time. Well, the problem I think is that these underpants, while they were stylish, they were a nice gray.
Uh-huh.
They were briefs, and I'm a boxer brief kind of guy, so it was just uncomfortable. So I couldn't bring myself to actually wear them, and so I
uh,
kept. And so there's more. Um, these maybe I shouldn't have bought like a 48 pack, but I had.
I still have that pack. I think I have a 12, but I still have the one you're talking about.
Wait a second. Why
Keep
are?
going, go.
Oh,
Keep
okay.
finishing.
Okay. So anyway, they're kind of expensive. So I'm like, I'm not going to throw these away. There
Yeah.
may come a time when I'm willing to wear them.
Yeah.
Um, but I was cleaning out my closet the other day, and I think I might have finally thrown them away, or give. No, maybe I gave them to Goodwill.
Did you give them to a good
I
home?
th-
You
I
found
think
a good
I might have given them to Goodwill.
took them to a
Um,
farm out in the country.
my thought process, I'm sure that I put it in the Goodwill basket. I don't know if it went, but my thought process was they're probably not going to sell an open package of diapers, but I don't know. They're expensive. Maybe somebody could benefit from them.
Man, I
Now
just
you tell me about your package of diapers before you get all righteous and condemning toward me.
well, if I had the tone of self-righteous and condemnation, I apologize. Um especially after what I'm about to tell you. Um so when I first moved here to Georgia, I got a job at that I'm pretty sure I can't say the name of this company. Well, not the
It's an oil company, right?
oil company. Yeah, they're tied to one of the big baddies. I think they're owned by one of the big baddies. Um anyway, I was at an office job. I was this terminal where I was doing algebra all day. I was watching petroleum like re leave the refineries in Houston and travel in these like 1 foot to 3 foot diameter underground pipes from Houston all along the Gulf, in and out on land, in the water, uh, come to Atlanta, where it's distributed from Atlanta up to Tennessee and up the East Coast of the United States. Um, Most petroleum products in the United States is shipped underground. The trucks that you see, those cylinder trucks, those the pipes underground go to hundreds of these little distribution centers all over the United States. Those trucks come and hook up to these distribution centers and then drive it to the gas stations. So
Oh,
when you
interesting.
so when you see those big cylinder trucks come up to the gas stations, they're not driving from El Paso, where the refinery is, or Houston, or Corpus Christi. They're driving from a couple miles down the block where the distribution center is. And so that's how gas gets from the refineries to your pump. That
Yeah,
exact system.
I had no
Um,
idea.
well, I was the controller. It was hydraulics engineer position. I tested for it. I had a friend from the Navy who works at one of these distribution centers. And so when I was leaving law enforcement, I was like, hey, Georgia looks like a good spot. Let's go there. And he is like, hey, I can get you an interview for this job that he was doing, which is like more of a field technical job out there, like hands-on spot. I applied for that job and they had me test for it and I tested and they're like, "Hey, we want you to test for this other job, which is the hydraulics engineer." And I was like, "Well, there's no engineer in my name, but sure, I'll test for it." And I passed. And I got this job at this terminal and I was watching gas move from this is all a story about adult depends, by the way. This is
I'm
I,
waiting.
I was watching diesel, like high and low grade diesel, high and low grade gasoline, high and low grade kerosene, which and JP5 like jet fuel, moved from Texas to Atlanta. I and I was doing math, and I was like the whole time I was measuring time, distance, speed to find out what time this product was going to get from, here to here. And it's highly pressurized, very explosive things that are moving under churches, under these pipes are going
Yeah.
they're everywhere. They're going under, stadiums, they're going under neighborhoods, they're going everywhere. So you have to be Johnny on the spot when it comes to your math of where this product is and what the pressure is and what the temperature is to make sure, the United States doesn't blow
And
up.
and that's you have to do that like manually? What if you do your math wrong?
Yeah. Well, there's a computer that's telling you what the numbers are, but it has to come down because FAA controls this, believe it or not, or like the Department of Energy.
Okay.
And uh there has to be a human in control. Like you can't, because the way the laws are written right now, there has to be a human to control it. Eventually, this will be replaced and it will be error free. But there has to be a human controller, and I was that human controller, and so it is nerve wracking. Like it's 12-hour shifts, and with an hour turnover, so you can add 30 minutes on each end of the turnover, so it's really like 15 hours. And I was driving an hour there, an hour there, an hour back every day. And I gained like 60 pounds. I was 265
Yeah.
pounds.
That sounds miserable.
I gained a ton of weight. I was constantly stressed, and I was just stress eating all the time. Well, we found this pizza place out here called Mellow. Oh, I can't
Oh,
say it.
Melon.
Don't.
Oh, I think I know what you're talking about. I love that place.
It's a good place.
Yeah.
I've been back to one. Well, we went to one on one day where we went on the wrong day, and everyone in my house got food poisoning
Oh no.
for like a week. And how my schedules was and I've never had real food poisoning until I got this food poisoning. Like
Yeah.
I've eaten a bad salad, and I've had to go to the bathroom, yada yada. That's not what this was. This was every 5 minutes. It felt like it could be a disaster. Like you're praying for your life every 5 minutes. You can't trust anything. You can't
Yeah.
trust any. You can't trust anything. Every 5 minutes could be a car wreck. Like,
Hmm.
did you hit a deer? Like that's how it could. And what my schedule at this place was, I was like on 5 days in a row, off 3 days in a row. Like I had these runs, and I was rotating from day shift to night shift. But I had these runs where I would like have off. Sometimes I think the most we ever had off, it was like 5 days in a row of just like your regular time off, not vacation, anything. Well, when I got this food poisoning, I was just riding it out, and it was on one of these 5 days off in a row. This food poisoning lasted like a week. And
Mm.
so when I started getting up to day 4, day 5, like halfway through day 5, I'm like, I'm going to go to work and I'm going to shit my pants at a terminal, because at a terminal, you cannot just walk away. There has to be someone there at your terminal because they're watching hundreds of
Is there
thousands of barrels of oil move all around the United States.
so is there a process for, hey, I gotta leave right this
Yeah.
second? Like you can tap somebody in?
Yeah.
Okay.
What there is some terminals have two people for just that reason. And so when anyone there's a control center. This is all open source information or whatever. It's not classified at all, but there's a big room with a bunch of these terminals in it. And so someone in the room is like I said, some of these terminals have two people, most of them only have one. There's a supervisor in the back who's like the ringleader. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
His desk is physically elevated above everyone so he can see their screens, and so if someone says, "I got an emergency," he can be right there.
How many people are in this room?
About 12 to 14.
Okay.
Um maybe 14 to 18. with the double terminals. But anyway, so there's processes in place, but it's not like there's processes in place, but it's not like I can just say, "Hey, I gotta go and run real quick." That's not like that is not the process to do it. That's not
Yeah.
the proto. So I was thinking, uh, I'm gonna have to wear this. Like I cannot call off because I was in my 90-day probationary period where like if they don't like the tie you wear, they can let you go.
Right.
And Georgia is not a right to work state. Like so like they keep saying this. I don't know. I can't explain it. Basically, you can be fired just because here. It
Yeah.
I think it's some old Jim Crow laws that have still carried over, but either way, it's they don't like the way you look, they can just let you go.
Yeah.
Um so anyway, I thought I was gonna shit my pants to work. Yeah, I keep dragging it. I thought I was gonna shit my pants at work, so I bought these adult diapers and I wore them for a day, did not shit my pants, and then realized how silly it was. And
Could could you tell that you're wearing the diaper? Like
I
was
don't
it
think so. But I
yeah?
was I was getting big at this time. I was I
Oh,
was
okay.
I was getting big in the belly.
So you had kind of a natural fupa anyway, and then just wearing this diaper just
Yeah, I mean, definitely wouldn't call it a fupa, but yeah, futta, futta.
um yeah, dude, that I mean that's kind of a different level of commitment. Like I wasn't about to diarrhea
Oh,
in my
now you go
pants.
ahead, judge me. Go ahead,
Um,
judge me. You're
'cause-
perfectly willing to drive across the country and piss your pants. You know how
yes.
disgusting that is? Do you
D-
remember? Do you remember changing kids' diapers?
Yeah, that's exactly where I'm going with this. And the ones that
It
when they
was
would
not a
like
simple process.
when they would crap up their back,
Yeah, dude.
that's
Now
what that's
imagine
that's
doing.
what that's what you're proposing.
You're just.
And
You're just.
and you're saying, hold on, you're saying I'm willing to sit in this chair and monitor millions of barrels of petroleum with diarrhea up my back like nothing
Because I have a
happened.
little something called discipline and commitment. Okay, I've been in tough situations and I've had to carry on. All right, don't judge me. Sitting there, yeah, I'm willing to shit my pants for this country.
Um, I'm honestly, I'm a little surprised that, not that I don't want to give anybody any ideas, but that would be a pretty dang good terror attack to exploit
Oh,
the.
dude. Well, it's all open source information, but this country is incredibly vulnerable. Um, One of the things I'd say, well, that I'd want to talk about before was what was really it was just that, but how vulnerable specifically our seaports. Like I don't. Most of the country does not live on the coast because of how big the country is.
Mhm, mhm.
Most of the country is somewhere in the interior. But if you live on the coast, I think you take it for granted. But no one's patrolling the water. Like you can drive a boat, you could drive an oil tanker right up into L.A. Harbor,
The Coast Guard
and
isn't.
I mean, yeah, sure they're there, but the ocean is just so big. The ocean is just so big. There's so many holes. Even when we've tried to do like military blockades, like of Cuba, think about Cuba during the
Hmm.
Cuban Missile Crisis, Russian warships still got through undetected. Surface warships, not submarines. There was some submarines, but surface warships still got through undetected. And we had our entire US Navy surrounding a little island, Cuba.
Wow.
So now we're not dedicating the entire US Navy to guarding the coast. We're dedicating the Coast Guard. And even then, they have like maybe at best 50% of their ships up at a time, like actually patrolling.
Hmm.
And I mean, think about our shift, how many patrol cars we had versus how many patrol cars were actually on the street.
Could you say that it's so? Let's say that we had on our interdiction team. I think at the most we had 5 deputies and
Yeah.
me. And our job was to like we were doing interdiction, so we're
Hmm.
patrolling, you're I tell you, hey, go out, find a
That's
load of dope.
exactly what it's
And
like.
then you say, okay, I'm either going to work the turnpike or I'm going to work 135 or I'm going to work 54. Your choice, just go. And
Yeah.
then maybe three of you go out to 54. One of you go up to the turnpike, or two of you go to the turnpike, and now nobody's patrolling 135. Is
Right.
that kind of how it is?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
And they try to mitigate with different types of coverage. Like if there's going to be no surface coverage, then maybe get some aerial patrols. But what that looks like is a fixed wing flight, maybe once a day, going through, just checking this route. So if you're not under the view of that fixed wing flight, it's an open it's an open road. Like they do try to mitigate it, but yeah.
So
You
if somebody were, whether they're bringing
I mean, where do you
people,
think all these drugs are coming from?
well, that's what I was getting at. So whether it's people, contraband, or terrorism, whatever, um, would the goal just be to like kind of put as many, like just put a bunch out there, and if three or four get picked off, then you're okay? Or are there tactics that they use like they do in highway interdiction? There are tactics that people will use, to disguise what they're doing. Would it be the same sort of thing there?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it's the same sort of thing because it's the same people. Like the number one, the experts, the world experts at defeating U.S. any type of U.S. border security would be narco criminal organizations because they've been doing it for decades, and you know what I mean.
Hmm.
Even taking out any of the conjecture or you know what I mean, like assuming that there's the movies are right because that's where most people go. They're like a lot of people think, oh, there's dirty cops letting them in, and that could be, you know what I mean, to some degree, whatever that looks like. But even taking all of that out, it's just logistically impossible to stop everything. So they both throw numbers at it. Like we used to say, as soon as you got one load on the side on the shoulder, there's 10 more going past you. Like we
Hmm.
know it's just a drop in a bucket or drop in the
Hmm.
ocean. So numbers defeat it and technology and tactics. So the technology is hidden compartments or maybe different delivery methods, but like on the road with us, it was hidden compartments. The tactics would be learning when the high driving with the high traffic patterns because if I was a smuggler, that's what I would do. I would drive with the high traffic patterns. Like if I do see a cop, I want you to see me at a school, like at a school zone time in a school zone where you're not looking for me,
Hmm.
especially the way I'm driving and in the condition of the vehicle I'm in. You're not looking for me, you know. Yeah.
Yeah.
So with tactics, techniques, procedures, technology, it's a combination. And we know because this is like the entire world knows this, but at one point I think it was called like a conspiracy, and it's weird that people still think. I still feel like people would judge me by saying this, but like we know at least like the most conservatively thousands of people on the terrorist watch list have come over the southern border in the past 4 years. We know at tens of millions of people have, but out of those tens of millions of people, like that's a lot of people. We know the most conservative numbers are thousands of documented terrorists have come over. We think it's tens of thousands of documented terrorists have come across willy nilly across the southern border. The entire coast have been like the southern border, but for decades.
Hmm. No, and nobody talks about that.
No, 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 no. I think, like I said, the people. If you don't live on the coast, you never notice that. And if you do live on the coast, I think you just take it for granted because it's what you've seen your entire life. But especially the people in the Navy, if there's anyone in the Navy that listens to this, I know there are people that what anyway. You know that the waters are completely unprotected. People in the Navy do, but the folks who happen to be by an ocean, look out. Look at how big the I mean, it's the horizon. when you're looking out there. It's
Yeah.
the horizon and everything in it. And at most in a day you'll see, well, unless you live like in a port city, but even then you're going to see commercial boats and coming in and out all day unchecked. They can't be checked. They're running the world's economy. You know what I mean? Like, hey, I
Mm.
got all this stuff on here, and we're in a schedule in the LA harbor.
Yeah.
If you hold me up, you're going to be holding up tens of billions worth of the U.S. economy.
And maybe a good example of that is remember when we had a deputy get in a wreck on the train tracks at Clifton and K15?
Yeah.
Ended up on the tracks. Well, the the railroad guy was out there super quick, and he was kind of being a jerk. But his whole deal was, for every minute that this track is inoperable, we're losing that, I want to say millions, but like tons of. I was shocked at the amount of money he said was being lost by this track being shut down. Probably the same kind of thing.
Oh yeah. I mean, and that is a train track in South Wichita. Now imagine the LA harbor
Yeah.
or Corpus Christi, another city-size port, or Norfolk, Virginia, which is a city-size port. And that's a small one compared to Baltimore or New York harbor or LA harbor. Like the harbor takes up pretty much the coast of those cities.
So do you think that, with all of that being said, and all of the attention that's given to the land borders, southern border, Mexico, are we just missing? How do I want to say it?
Well, I
Is
think
that the bulk of it? From
I don't I think people are just now starting to wake up, and people are just now starting to recognize the vulnerabilities. And I think the southern border fiasco, because it was so politicized, because it was so exaggerated on both sides, and there were some wild ass claims, and there was a lot of stuff that was just straight up never reported on. Um, a lot of people are more attention or have more attention now about how vulnerable we are in the southern border. But there's people who've been talking about this forever, and they're getting more popular. Like Sean Ryan, the Sean Ryan show, the podcast? I've sent you
Yes,
clips
yeah,
of
yeah, yeah.
his.
Okay, that's
Uh, I really like his show, but he has people on that have been talking about this for years, like former people in government that have trying to been bringing this up, like former CIA employees, former FBI employees, former DOD or DOJ, uh, Senate staffers that have been like, there's been hearings about the EMP vulnerability since the 90s. The latest one, I think, was in 2013, the one that was published. But basically, every time they do one of these hearings, they're like, hey, we're super vulnerable to EMPs, which could be weaponized, or it could also be a coronal mass ejection, a CME, which would do the same thing. An airburst nuke would do the same thing as a CME, a coronal mass ejection, which could happen at any moment from the sun. And like, there's almost no way to predict it, a CME. Uh, but the U.S. has no protection against it. Like power grids, including the power grid that like our DOD depends on, and our DOJ, Department of Defense, and our Department of Justice, and Department of Energy, and all, like, our U.S. infrastructure depends on these grids that are not protected, and they are vulnerable.
wow.
If you want to see how vulnerable they are, people don't people don't understand. I'm gonna get loud because I'm gonna get a little passionate. Think about that weather balloon or the two weather balloons
Yeah,
that
yeah.
flew across the United States unfucking checked, taking
Dude,
pictures.
talk about the drones.
Well, that's what I'm getting to. It makes my blood boil. Uh, it's not a conspiracy theory, man. We're being invaded. This country is at war, and I think there's only two options. Like, either the current administration is so bad at their job, or the current government is so bad at their job where they're letting obviously foreign actors, advanced foreign actors, fly over our most sensitive parts, like the FBI headquarters and the CIA headquarters and the White House, or at least in Washington D.C. And you don't have to be over the White House. If you're in Washington D.C. and you get high enough, you can see, you know, think about standing on a tall building. You
Yeah.
don't have to be over the military base to see every fucking thing on that military base.
Your
Just get,
supervisor at
yeah,
your old job.
at
He's
my old
elevated
job.
and can see the
And so, obviously, there are foreign actors inside the United States that are acting. And the only thing that the White House has said, the director of the FBI, the current director of the FBI, he said, we don't know where they're from. We don't know exactly what they are. We don't know exactly what they're doing. But there's one thing we do know: they're not dangerous. Well, man, if you don't know any fucking thing about these things, but the
Yeah,
only
that's a
thing you
big
do
assumption.
know, that's a huge assumption. And so these government leaders are either so bad at their job where they're letting this where like they maybe he honestly believes they're not dangerous. Well, in that case, he is the R word. Do I violate community standards if I say the R word?
Oh, probably.
Okay. He is the R word. If that's what he truly believes. So he needs to be fired. And and everyone who believes that, I mean, that is a mental illness. You're just ignoring reality. That's like saying an open border is fine. And if you have anything bad to say about it, you're racist. That's a form of mental illness. And the right has their own versions too. And I'm perfectly willing to talk about that. But if you're so committed to protecting the image of this administration that you're willing to sacrifice the safety and the integrity of the people you're supposed to be protecting, you're very bad at your job and need to be fired. The only other option is you're doing it intentionally.
Mm.
And then there's a lot of questions that need to be had. Because if you're doing it intentionally, you need to be in prison. You need to be punished. You need to be stopped. You know what I
Yep.
mean? So either way, these people have to be stopped. I don't know. I just pulled the brakes on myself. What were we talking about? Were we going down the conspiracy train?
Well, I mean, we were at a point where it's not a conspiracy, but
It's not.
I have something to input in there. But what we were
Oh, we're
talking
talking about
about,
the vulnerabilities.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I think people are just now their eyes are starting to be opened, but like I sent you the link to CIA.gov for their unclassified
yeah, bro.
uh
You sent me the laserfish. I pulled that up, and I was like, "Well, how am I going to consume this?"
well,
Like
you have to read it.
it's it's a huge document. Did you read the whole thing?
No, but I've scammed
Okay.
over it. And if you read it, they were referencing things in like 1955 that they did not want to be unclassified until 2018. They
Hmm.
were referencing that in 1955 when this document was written. They were like, and this will not be unclassified. And like some of it was like 2002, some of 1998. They were predicting 40, 50, 60 years down the road. Like, hey, we want to be dead when this stuff comes out. That's what they're saying. Like, we want no liability. And if you read between the lines what Donald Trump said on Joe Rogan about the JFK paperwork, because what he said was that the reason he didn't get too far into it and the reason people like Mike Pompeo were telling him not to look into it was because the people that were mentioned in it are still alive, is what he was getting at.
Interesting.
He's like, there's people that would still be affected by yada yada. I'm like, oh, well, then we need to talk about this.
Yeah.
Uh, but you can tell like they had that in mind because the MK Ultra document, there was things like to not be released until like I said 40, 50, 60 years later, which means I want to be dead by the time this comes out. Like I want no culpability or no attachment to
Yeah.
this. And then by that time, whenever it like MK Ultra has success, like there's psyops within psyops because what happened now that that stuff is declassified 60 years later, if you would have mentioned it in 1950, you're a loon and they would have put you in a straitcoat and into an insane asylum. If you bring it up in 1990, like, oh, you're just a punk conspiracy theorist. If you bring it up in 2018, you're an idiot. Like, there's movies written about this. Are you talking about that movie? You know, are you talking about, what is it, John Wick? Like, you idiot. You think the Manchurian Candidate was about MK Ultra, about mind control. That's what MK Ultra was the CIA had documented. It was called MK Ultra from 1955 to like 1975, and it was their documented official attempt at controlling at mind control. They wanted to be able to implant memories. They wanted to be able to implant training that would only be activated in certain situations. Like if you see there's a Denzel Washington movie, The Manchurian Candidate,
Mm-hmm.
where he gets turned into a CIA assassin, and it's because they activate him.
So I haven't, like I said, I haven't read that thing you sent me. I need to get it on my computer so I can see it easier because it's so small.
Yeah.
Um, you're saying that they have the ability to quote unquote activate people. Uh, I'm picturing mind control.
Well,
I'm
that
picturing like I'm doing my thing and now I'm
no.
activated
It
and now
explicitly states it. They
that's
even
what it
talked
is.
about trauma training. They even talk about in the document. They talk about trauma training, and this is from CIA.gov, homie.
Now, now does it say that is there indications that they were successful in doing this or that was just their goal?
Well, that is not in this report, but they intentionally, and I'm looking at it right now. You won't be able to see it. Yeah,
Yeah.
like imagine the King James Bible, listeners. Imagine the King James Bible with no commentary, but it's just packed word to or side to side with the tiniest font.
Nope. No paragraph breaks.
No paragraph. You cannot scroll. So whenever the CIA says, "Yeah, this is full disclosure," who's going to take the time to read this microfilm thing that lays out? They talk about bad things in there, and it's completely declassified. That's what I'm talking about. There's psyops within psyops. Like you can't. You have to take the time to read this, and then if you're talking about this in 2025, something that happened in 1955, it doesn't apply. Like that's some old shit, bro. You know
Hmm.
that's back then. We're not back then. And also, if you talk about them using trauma training, and they even talk about psychics, and they were unknowingly dosing Johns and these CIA brothels, they lay it all out in there in this
In
document.
this document that you sent me.
They talk about yeah. That was
Okay.
all MK Ultra.
Okay.
Um, You're a fucking idiot if you believe that in 2025 and you talk about it on Fox News, or if you talk about it, and try to hold someone accountable, because there's 60 years worth of separation. What they did was so preposterous that it's literally unbelievable. And the way they present it is not easy to read. It's not easy to access. And if I show you this document, I might as well be wearing a tinfoil hat. I have the documents. That's what and that's what Alex Jones is always saying. I have the documents. The problem is these documents look like this.
Yeah.
They look like you cut out the letters from a magazine and glued them on a piece of paper.
Yeah.
So what I was talking about is how vulnerable the United States is, and
Oh.
it almost seems like it was either they're so negligent or they're so bad. Like
Okay.
like even releasing that document on NK Ultra. If you wanna refute me and prove me wrong, make it easy to read, make it transparent. Especially now that it's declassified, hold yourselves accountable and make it transparent. You're not doing that, which naturally takes away trust. If that is a form of deception, and you can say, there's merit to classified information, and I agree to an extent. But anything classified by its very nature is a lie of omission. Like you're being deceptive just by having classified stuff. And I understand the need for it, but you also have to understand it does not build trust. Secrets don't build trust.
Hmm.
And if everything you do is a secret, Department of Information, Department of Justice, FBI, and all the other, if everything you do is a secret, then man, it's hard to trust you. And then when it comes to find out that something I did want to talk about, the new leader of Syria, which by the way, Biden and Netanyahu have both basically they facilitated the regime change of throwing out Assad, which they wanted to do. They wanted to do since, for decades. They've wanted to throw out Assad. They finally has successfully thrown out Assad, completed the regime change there. The person they put in, Abu Muhammad al-Ghalani, is the former leader, the former premier, before he took this title as the leader of Syria. He was the leader of Al-Qaeda in Syria. The person that's running Syria is the leader of Al-Qaeda in Syria.
And you're saying that
We facilitated that regime change.
specific, okay, so we got rid of Assad. That was the goal. Did we want this guy, or we just wanted Assad out?
They're gonna say, of course not, right?
Okay.
You might as well be. I might as well have a tinfoil hat on my head if I say they wanted this guy in there. Until you just do a little research, and I don't know, like this was all stuff on New York Times and in Fox News in 2011. We started training Syrian rebels. The U.S. specifically started training these Syrian rebel groups and these Syrian rebel alliances. Well, we started distancing ourselves from these people officially in like 2014 when they changed their name from the Syrian rebel army to ISIS. The people we trained and funded and armed changed their own name to ISIS.
Same
Well,
people? Same organization.
This guy, who's now the leader of Syria, was documented, was a trained rebel leader, trained by the CIA and the Department of State. Like to defeat Assad. Well, we started distancing ourselves from them when they became ISIS, and then they ran down there and took over Iraq that we just defeated, or that we just liberated. That's what happened.
Did their tactics and goals change when they changed to ISIS?
I don't know, because the first time you start seeing the tactics that we don't like, and what I'm referring to is the brutality, like drilling holes in women's heads for not wearing their burqas, or for throwing gay people off of tall buildings, or for burning them alive, burning Christians alive, raping Christians and selling them into slavery, all the things that ISIS did, sodomizing gay men to death, sodomizing Christian women to death, raping them to death, all the things that ISIS did really came on the scene when they changed their name from Syrian freedom fighters to ISIS. And so you have to ask yourself, where did they learn this from? They weren't making news until we trained them. And we trained them to be guerrilla fighters. And terror is a guerrilla tactic. So I would say, I mean, it smells dirty. You can't prove it, and you can't say anything for certainty, but it smells dirty, especially because the CIA is trained. We have a history of this. We trained the Taliban, which turned into Al-Qaeda. So it's not the first time we've stood up Al-Qaeda. We have a long history of funding and training Al-Qaeda. The same people that attacked us on 9/11. The same people that, if you go back far enough, is actually in charge of October 7th in Israel. The Hamas stuff was actually an Al-Qaeda operation, and there's documented links to that, like open source information that connects October 7th in Israel and Hamas actually to Al-Qaeda. The thing is what they're wanting to do is all these terrorist organizations. Osama bin Laden talked about this, and his son, who's the new premier of international Al-Qaeda, they want to take these labels off of it and actually present themselves as a united Islamic caliphate. Like, we don't want Hamas, these people, Al-Qaeda, Taliban. We want a united Islamic caliphate. And that was the message of Osama bin Laden. That's the message of his son, who's the new leader of Al-Qaeda. And that's the message of this dude that's now in charge of Syria. And so I think the question was, did we put him there intentionally? I don't know, but it sure looks like it because we trained him and funded him
Yeah.
to defeat Assad. He did that. And he's also the same guy that was drilling holes in women's heads and throwing gay people off tall buildings. So yay, Geo. That's it. One of my big arguments is that the US is not the world's police, right?
Mhm.
I say that passionately because I'm affected by being the world's police. I'm affected with PTSD and a head injury. My wife is affected by a back injury when she fell down the magazine on the USS George Washington in operations furthering our 20-year global war on terrorism. We're out to sea on deployment. She fell down the magazine ladder well. She has back problems. She will for the rest of her life. She had surgery on it. She's had multiple surgeries. Her brother, my brother-in-law, can't sleep at night and can't hear. I have friends that are missing legs. I have friends that have died. Like, I am personally very affected by the US being the world police. And if you're not, you are connected to people who are, like as an American. It's not doing us any good. We're not making friends. Like this game that we've been doing, which is since World War II, you know, yeah, post World War II is when America became this empire. I think it's safe to say that we shouldn't be doing it. We haven't had any real W's come out of this. Like this experiment of starting the Cold War. Like post World War II is immediate Cold War with communism. There wasn't anything good that came out of that. This post World War II, Great Britain drew the dividing lines without the consent of the Middle East, but of all the countries in the Middle East, Great Britain drew the border lines of all of those post World War II. That's also when they forced Jewish people into the Middle East and created the state of Israel. Was post World War II, 1946, 1947. Nothing good has come out of that. Like they didn't like those lines. The people who lived there didn't like those lines. That was the whole thing in Iraq. The Sunnis and the Shias, they were forced to live together. That all comes out of Great Britain drawing these lines, making these countries in the Middle East post World War II. They needed these lines because of trading alliances. Because post World War II is when we started signing all these treaties. There was lots of reasons, but saying of basically making sure that a world war would never happen again. Like they wanted to create stability in that region, North Africa, the Middle East, because that's where Europe was doing most of its trading, and this through the Suez Canal, into India. That's where the world was ran, is in the Mediterranean. So they wanted the Mediterranean to be peaceful or to be stable, and so that's why they drew these lines in there. That geopolitical engineering, there hasn't been a ton of great things coming out of it. Now, that's all, I don't know, that's all like front page history book stuff. Well, then when you start going into these now declassified programs of like training the Taliban, the U.S. intelligence apparatus starting the Arab Spring movement that ended up overthrowing Tunisia, the governments of Tunisia, the governments of Egypt. Like Egypt had a military coup from the Arab Spring uprisings. It caused a lot of instability in Bahrain and Saudi Arabia. We're always trying to start this fucking war with Iran. Nothing good has come out of it. In fact, we're making our next enemies.
So the thing though, like I've always viewed, and I think probably most your average American would view our intervention into these other countries as something noble, as like it's our responsibility. Now I don't. That's how I used to view it. Now I just don't trust our government.
Well,
So what I'm getting at is our intervention, is it even possible that we're trying to be noble, or is it all about money and oil and power? And
well, that's what you have to really ask yourself. Is it all about money, oil, and power? Because it's always sold as a humanitarian thing, right? We have to protect the people of Israel. We have to protect the Kurds in Iraq. We have to protect the Kuwaitis. We have to protect the whatever minority population here is. Okay, that's very noble. Are very rich people making a lot of money in all of these conflicts? Yes, they are. Does that mean it's evil? Not necessarily. Does that mean your intentions are evil? Not necessarily. But are there people making a lot of money on this situation? Yes. Now, if you look at Africa, where the Hutsus and the Tutsis, and people are starving to death every day in Africa, we've known about it. There's genocides going on there every day. The Hutsus and the Tutsis have been at war. It's a Muslim tribe and a Christian tribe, and the Christians are each tribe has committed unspeakable tortures against the other, like all the mutilations, all of the things they've done to each other. The Christians have done just as much as the Muslims. The U.S. has never intervened in that. Remember a couple years ago, there was this warlord that was, it got brought up, it got made popular that he was trafficking children.
Yeah.
You remember that?
Yeah.
Nothing ever happened from that. There's decades and decades of like blood diamonds. We know all of our chips come from these conflict zones, which are slavery. All of their diamonds that are sold at Tiffany's, they all come from Africa, and they're all from slavery. We've known about that forever, and we do nothing about it because there are multiple international treaties that says basically Africa is off limits. Post World War II, like after these lines were drawn, we made these multiple international treaties that says because Africa is full of gems and full of these precious minerals and full of like gold, full of all this stuff. One of the positive things to come out of, like, I don't think all these people were evil, obviously. One of the things they said is that Africa is hands off. Like, there's no more colonization of Africa, and there's not to be any exploitation of Africa. Like, international companies are not supposed to, based off these old treaties, are not supposed to go in. Like, Chevron should not be in Africa drilling for oil. There shouldn't be, based on these agreements. Because of these agreements, no one wants to go to Africa. There are none of those agreements for the Middle East. There's definitely none of those agreements for the Caucasus Mountain regions of Ukraine and Poland, and there's none of those agreements there. They have the UN, which are separate things. But I'm saying you can exploit those places for money. That's the interest. You can exploit those places for money. You can exploit Iraq for lots of different natural resources. The main one, and it's not oil like everyone says it is. The US companies go in there, and sure, oil is a big part of it, but the big one is the rebuilding, the infrastructure. Like who you're paying to cause the mess and who you're paying to fix the mess, who you're paying to fix those people. And then you leave it alone and let it turn back into a mess. Like we're watching happen with Iraq.
So what you're saying is like, so you have a company that specializes in demolition and rebuilding.
Yeah,
And
the demolition company is called the U.S. military, and the rebuilding company is called Kellogg Brown and Root.
and you own both.
And I own both because my name is BlackRock, or my name's Dick Cheney, the Vice President of the United States. Like that situation actually happened in the Iraq War. Dick Cheney, who is the CEO of Kellogg Brown and Root, won multiple no-bid contracts. No other companies bid for him to rebuild and to run the logistics of Iraq, the country that the U.S. was at war at. So the Vice President of the United States got no-bid contracts to rebuild and to run the logistics for Iraq. Like I don't know how to lay
Dude,
it out.
It's mind blowing.
That's weird, right? Like that's where the real money's made. It's not made on the oil. There's no money to be made in Africa because we can't exploit its natural resources, or at least
And so because of that, we don't care about that conflict.
we don't care about them. Yeah. So you can't say it's about our humanitarian. You can't say it's because you're good people and you care about this or that, because Africa exists. And also because South Wichita exists and Detroit exists and, you know what I mean, Atlanta exists. There are plenty of impoverished people right here in the United States. Plenty of people without food, plenty of people without shelter, without the resources, and without a way to get it. And yes, a lot of these people are immigrants. A lot of these people are illegals. You know what I mean? It's not a black and white, clear cut answer. But don't tell me it's about humanitarian whenever we have the United States
Mm-hmm.
and we have Africa and we have the Muslim populations of China and we have um oh my shucks. Oh my shucks. Oh my gosh. Tibet. Like we watched Tibet happen. The most peaceful, it was a country of pacifists, a country of Buddhist pacifists, Tibet. We watched them getting taken over by China in the what 50s and 60s, and we didn't do anything about that because there was no money to be made in Tibet.
Hmm.
It wasn't like Vietnam and Southeast Asia trade routes that had to be protected.
What I think probably exposure, understanding, awareness is probably the only thing that could possibly
Yeah.
turn the tide. But how does this can this change?
I mean, yeah, I think it's possible. I don't think these these lizard people, these elites, they don't have the real power that you think that they think that they do. Like we've seen that with the election, I think. And I say these elites, I mean the what people would call the deep state or the establishment, these bureaucrats, these people that are slightly hidden, the CEOs of BlackRock, the board members of BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street, the people that obviously make the levers go back and forth and make money off of it. They're not as powerful as we like to pretend that they are because Trump got elected. The machine obviously did not want Trump to be elected. That's why the polls told you that it was close. That's why the polls, we don't know what's going to go on, but we know that it's close. That's why a lot of polls were telling you the guy who wrote the 13 keys to the presidential winning has never been wrong. He was wrong because the establishment, the media, did not want Donald Trump to be elected. Obviously, they turned the entire machine against him. Well, it didn't work because the people still ultimately run the world. Like that's the big secret is the ants still run the colony. Like it, you can project yourself as the world leaders and in a way that you are, but you still depend on the compliance of the people. And if you don't have that, it doesn't matter how much money or control you throw out there, you still have to have the compliance.
So but how would an average citizen change the course, or like you just don't buy diamonds? Is that how you stop the mining, the
Man,
blood diamonds? You just don't buy them?
yeah. I mean, unless you can 100% verify that they didn't come from Africa, and it sucks to say that. Like it because what they're going to say is that it comes from a non-conflict zone. That's what these places in the mall say, that is these are non-conflict diamonds. Well, that's just like saying Oakland isn't Wichita. Like, oh, Oakland's not Wichita. Where it's out of the Wichita zone. This is out of the conflict zone. Okay. Yeah, you're from Wichita. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah. Okay.
these are still conflict diamonds. If just because they're coming from a slightly outside of the map of where you say these conflict zones are, they're still conflict zones. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So, like we were talking about last week, and I don't want to sound, I'm definitely not perfect at this, and I definitely don't have it all figured out, but I think the only key is to make yourself a good person, to make yourself virtuous. And what that, and I think taking your, and man, I even hate, it makes me a little uncomfortable to say that I think that's a big difference between the fruits of the spirit and the Greek virtues is the difference between like the Boy Scout, Sunday school, Royal Ranger is of like almost naive idea of virtue would be like the fruits of the spirit, but like the Greek wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance, and that could be described as wisdom, courage, justice. I think would be better described as righteousness, and I think discipline would be a better name for temperance, like to make yourself, because temperance means make yourself temperate, like in equality with the world. But I think our view of that takes out the effort it takes. Like for me to be
Yeah.
temperate means I need my body to be healthy and I need my body to be good. I need to have right actions and right habits. That takes discipline. So I think
And the
discipline,
the concept of the fruit of the spirit is that it gets imputed into you. Like it
whenever
just
you
happens.
whenever you just say the magic prayer, the spell, which is what that is. Whenever you say the spell and let yourself be possessed is whenever the fruits of the spirit come into you. But I think the Greek idea, I think it fits better. Of it takes effort to be virtuous. Like there is a degree of virtue that maybe we're born with, but the only way to make to change the world is to add that virtue in you, and I think that virtue is contagious by necessity.
You said something last week that kind of it struck a chord with me, struck a nerve maybe. Um, we were talking about you were talking about somebody, and you said that sounds an awful lot like Jesus, and
Socrates.
something that we've talked about before, maybe not on here, but we've talked about before, is like how many throughout history, how
How many
many
Jesuses?
how many Jesus characters have been, and
Yeah.
and it's kind of funny. In Christianity, we would say, well, they copied,
Right.
they knew about Jesus, and so they made their own version of it or whatever.
Uh-huh.
But it's when you look at it from, I think the way we're looking at it now,
Logical, honestly.
honestly, yes,
Yeah.
you kind of look at it and you're like, huh, yeah, maybe this story is a story, and
Well,
it's been told thousands of times.
right. And maybe it's something I think that lends to the idea, the theory that I have, and it has been shared by people throughout time immemorium, and there's different versions of this, but basically it comes back to the idea that it's like, I mean, it's exactly what they say they are. They're the son of God, or they're the messenger of God, or how Socrates wouldn't say that about himself. What he would say is that he was. Apollo said that there's none wiser than Socrates, and his life was to prove Apollo wrong or to prove Apollo right. That's a whole different story. But all these people had a divine mission. Even though Socrates would definitely not call himself divine, they had a divine mission, and they came to challenge the establishment challenge the establishment and the authority, which was almost always the church and the government, or the church was the government, like it was intertwined. They came with like a weird message of peace, like of war and peace. Like Jesus did not lead an army. He wasn't a general. But he even said, "I did not come to bring peace, but a sword." You know what I mean? To divide.
Yeah, he was a rebel, a revolutionary.
Yeah. Socrates did not challenge the authority outright. He challenged it through his life, through his actions and his words of like conversations. Like he never went up to the leaders of Athens or like the generals or whatever and challenged them face to face. He challenged them with his new ideas, and his new thoughts, and that reached the established authority, and they didn't like it. They imprison these figures and usually end up killing them, or something happens. And that's not like a lot of the Mediterranean stories and the Eastern stuff. They didn't know it. Sometimes they became kings and rulers, like Ram and Krishna. Those were both kind of god figures or Jesus figures in the Hindu stories.
Mm-hmm.
I think Hinduism has a healthier relationship with, because it's a reflection of an older whatever human relationship with the divine, maybe, or at least theology. I think they have a healthier relationship with the personalities and the egos and the stories of these Jesus figures. But in the Western Mediterranean, like Socrates and Jesus and I don't know, who are the other ones? Gandhi? Maybe not. Who are the other Jesus figures?
Well, I was thinking of in Hinduism, we had talked about Ram and Hanuman.
Hanuman. I love Hanuman.
Um,
I don't know, just
Krishna's one too, for sure.
yeah. The Buddha. I'm picturing religious leaders that were
Hercules, I think, is a Jesus story. I think
yeah.
it's probably the version we have, like all stories, is probably a different version than the original story. I think the original story, like Thor is kind of a Jesus story. Odin, definitely. Odin hung himself on a cross. So to talk like
So,
Jesus was a god who killed himself for himself. Odin did the same thing.
so when you I'm like the Jesus figure is and let, let me know if this is how you picture the Jesus figure. It's God came down to his creation. He practiced love,
Oh no.
self-sacrifice. No, what's yours?
The Jesus figure in mine, and like even going back to when I would call myself mainstream Christian. My Jesus figure was always separate than God. It was always a separate entity than God the Father.
Okay.
Was always a separate entity. Like going back to my mainstream beliefs. And the Holy Spirit, like now this doesn't make sense to me and it's almost laughable, but the Holy Spirit was like the separate third figure that is just like kind of there for the party.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, I've always thought of them as three separate things that, with our powers combined, we are God.
Wonder
Yeah.
Twin power activate. Form of a god. Shape of an
Oh,
eagle.
my daughter says this thing. I don't know where she got it from, but she said it since she was like 3, that we still say now, and it's Holy Spirit activate. Holy Spirit activate. So like whenever she's struggling on her homework or like struggling to pick up something, we'll get around and go, Holy Spirit activate.
Is that something you said that was something you did as a kid?
No, that's something she's done since a kid. It just came to her.
Oh,
She's a
nice.
Blackwood, man.
Yeah, I like it.
This stuff just follows us.
Um, but so just in general, though, you wouldn't say that the Jesus figure would be represented by God coming down to his creation, practicing all of the virtues,
But
love, patience, sacrifice for the sake of its creation.
well, then there's no separation between Jesus and God, or is that the point?
Um, I
Because
mean,
then who's he talking to when he says, "Father, forgive them," if he is the Father?
that's one of the things that I think that's one of the theologies that in mainstream Christianity, you kind of just have to mash it together and say that it fits. You
Yeah,
know, that
which is not an honest thing
three
to do.
three distinct personalities that are actually one, kind of like ice. It's water, it's
Yeah.
solid,
Oh, I
and if
never
you
like that.
and if you put it in a warm environment, it'll become a vapor.
I was
Clearly,
see.
that's how I can prove the Trinity.
I was always more of an egg man.
Oh
I
yeah,
like the egg. I
yeah,
like the
that's a
egg.
good one too.
Yeah, the shell, the white, and the yolk. But even still, looking back, like, well, how does that possibly equate to the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit if they do what you tell me that they do? Like, if, like, there has to be separation between God and Jesus, or else who was Jesus talking to? Why does he call him Father? And what exactly is the Holy Spirit? If you say that he's the power of God, does that mean that God has no power with the Holy Spirit without the Holy Spirit? Well, then wouldn't that just be the strength of God? Like
But
I don't call my strength. My strength doesn't have a separate name. My strength is still me.
you would just say that the power of God is distinct, but also part of God. Another example is mind, body, spirit. So somebody would say, well, the Trinity is just like you. You're a
Oh,
mind, you've got a body, and you've got a soul or spirit. But even that
still doesn't
is
check out.
it's just
No,
kind of
you're.
flaky because okay, now describe those. Well, you can't.
That's why Christians have such a bad name and have such a bad rep because, and I like, I'm not obviously not criticizing you, but I'm saying these arguments. I bought hook, line, and sinker, and I would throw them out, different versions of them, but just a little bit of a critical eye, they all fall apart. Like, God can't be mind, body, spirit, because then who was Jesus talking to? You wouldn't talk to your own mind, body, spirit that way. And what do you mean the Holy Spirit is separate? Like, then the Trinity is not Trinity, it's just one. And even then, who was Jesus talking to? Like, who is he praying to? Just a little bit of a critical eye, the Trinity falls apart, and especially because the Trinity isn't a thing from the Bible. It's something that we've imposed. Western evangelicals mostly, but starting in Europe, probably in I think I've heard like 500-600 after Jesus in the current era. So CE, 500-600 CE is when these thoughts started getting their legs that turned into what Western evangelicals consider. So it's not all on us. I wouldn't say the onus is us as Western evangelicals, but it is a creation that was pushed onto the Bible. Like, that notion of it being a creation that was pushed onto the Bible is historically documented because you didn't hear these ideas even being named or talked about until hundreds of years after the Bible was written. So that's that's just history. That's not me passing any judgment or you saying it's bad or less than or even greater than. It's just history that the idea of the Trinity and even the idea of Jesus being God didn't exist until hundreds of years after the New Testament was written.
Yeah. And I think that, there for a while when we were in our, I think, early episodes, we talked a lot about where we've gone spiritually. And so anybody tuning in right now might not quite understand.
Oh, shucks. I just dropped a bomb on some people maybe for the first time.
Yeah.
Oh,
well,
we're still Christians.
And here's why. Here's why. Because even though Jesus may have been a story, or his personality, his character is a story that's familiar throughout all of the ages, it's still like he's still a figure that is worth following. Like he still practiced love, and he practiced sacrifice, and he practiced temperance. He practiced all the virtues.
Yeah.
And I think there's value in following him. I think there's value in being his disciple. And I don't think that he has to be God for you to do that.
Right. And maybe he is God, but the real secret is he's God just as much as you are.
Just like you are, just like I am.
Yeah, he is the Son of God, and you are